Everybody hear me okay? Now you realize they're clapping after you said that you would have killed yourself. I just want you to take note of that. You know. All right, just to kind of get a general sense of who I'm speaking to here. How many of you guys are powerlifters? Hands up. Competitive powerlifters. Okay, trainers. Coaches. Olympic weightlifters. Good, can't help you that whole hell of a lot. A strongman. Bodybuilding. CrossFit. Can't help you that much either, but I'll try my best, you know. Okay, so what I wanted to, how many of you have been to one of the Learn to Train seminars before? That's another question that I have. All right, so you guys have seen Skinny Dave, Fat Dave, Median Dave, Big Dave, Small Dave, Hip Replacement Dave. You've seen me in many different forms. I like Murph myself with every seminar, so you never know what you're going to expect. I'm trying to think here which direction I want to go, because this is going to be the last Learn to Train. I want to try to do something a little bit different. You know what? We're going to go off the grid. How do I kill this? All right. Okay. I'm going to talk about some things that normally you wouldn't hear spoken about. My grammar's not always the best. I'm not an English major. I'm a meathead. All right. The topic I'm still going to keep is supplemental and accessory movements. I'm not going to change that. But I'm going to change how I approach it a little bit more and take some of the structure and some of the bullshit that would normally come with a normal presentation out of it, so you can actually use what the hell I'm going to give you, instead of going through point by point all this crap that you can see in any, you know, conference or seminar or whatnot. So with that in mind, what I see and have seen, I started competing in 82 or 83, and I retired in 2005. Let's just say it was a 50-50 retirement. 50% because I couldn't do it anymore physically, 50% because I really didn't have the desire or the passion that I had to be on the platform that I used to. So I don't want to say the card was forced for me, while it kind of was, but at the same time I knew it was time to kind of move on a little bit. There were a lot of things, and this is why I wanted to kill this. There's a lot of things that I've never spoke of before, because I don't like to be that person that says, if I was to go back and do it all over again, I would do this. If you've heard me speak before, you've always heard me say things like, I wouldn't change anything. I would have kept it all the same because that's what made me who I am. And that's generally how I feel. But at the same time, no presenter or anybody who is in strength and conditioning wants to go back and expose all their mistakes and say, well, I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong. But I've come to the conclusion that I've done 90% of the shit in my life wrong anyhow. So what do I got to lose? So there are some things that I would do differently. Training-wise, if I was to go back and do it all over again for powerlifting. And it's good that many of you raised your hands when I asked about powerlifting, because that's the example that I'm going to use. When you're powerlifting, the objective is very simple: to get a better squat, bench, and deadlift. That is your sport. That's the technique. So that's the most important thing. That's why you do what you do, to have the best squat, bench, and bench, and deadlift. I suck at the deadlift, that's why I can't say it very well. Always have, always will. Now, if you're to flip this around a little bit and think of this in terms of coaching, everybody has the goal of whatever you're coaching. I've consulted with a lot of coaches over the years. I cannot tell them, as I can't tell CrossFit or Olympic weightlifting, I can't tell them how to train. I've never done that. I refuse to tell or teach or coach anything I've never personally done. I don't know the skills behind it. I don't know the technique behind it. I can tell how to increase maximal strength, but is that going to have a dynamic correspondence to what you're doing or carryover? I don't know. I don't like to speak about things I don't know. I want to speak about things I do know. So if you are a coach and you're looking at an athlete, say a football player, one of the things that I would ask the coach who I would be consulting with are, what are the top 3 exercises you feel have the highest correspondence to the sport? And everybody's answer is going to be different because everybody's got a different training philosophy. They could say clean, they could say 40, they could say squat, whatever it is. To me, that's going to fall up on this high end. You know, it's going to fall on the technical end. So while I'm going through this, keep that in mind if you're not strictly a powerlifter. Keep in mind that the squat, bench, and deadlift merely only represent the goal that you're trying to achieve, whatever it would be, even if it was a decrease in body fat or whatnot. Under those would fall, and everybody's got different names for these things. This is breaking down a training session. Underneath that would fall the main exercise. Now, I don't care how you train. I don't care if you use a linear approach, a nonlinear approach, conjugate approach, or if you don't know what I'm talking about. I don't care if you train the cube, west side, give me some other ones. Juggernaut, dog crap, 5-3-1. All of them are going to fall. All these programs follow some type of progression, albeit linear, nonlinear, concurrent. That's pretty much it, or block. One of those 4. Every program you see out there is going to follow one of those 4, unless it's just a half-ass hazard program that's just thrown together without any thought. Then it just falls off into Never Land. You know, I would say that's not even a program, that's just a bunch of shit slapped together or just waiting for somebody waiting to get hurt. Because there's got to be some type of approach. So the reason I am saying that is because this main lift here is going to change based upon what philosophy or what type of program you're training. If you're using a program that would be more concurrent based or west side based, and then this main lift may be any max effort exercise or dynamic exercise. Or in the case of west side, it could be, you know, good mornings, low box squat, board press, 2 board press, floor press, or for speed work, box squats, dynamic bench presses. This is just the main movement and how it's being trained to correspond to the technical movement which is out there. In a concurrent approach, those movements are not the same. They're usually different. Everybody understand that? You know, I trained at Westside for 14 years, and the only time we did the technical list were when we were in a meet. All right, that's kind of one of the differences between a concurrent style of training compared to a block or linear or nonlinear. Now, if it is a block or one of the other styles, that main lift will actually be the squat, the bench press, or the deadlift. And those lifts are going to be cycled based upon whatever program you're using. Some of them may use a linear, which will start like at a 50% and then drive up to a 95. Some of them may wave. You know, some of them may go, you know, in a progression like that. I'm not getting really detailed in this because I want to talk about the stuff that falls underneath this. I'm giving you this as background for your own training programs to be thinking about how you train now and what you do. You know, what is the first movement? Is that first movement for you a max effort or dynamic exercise? Well, then you're using more of a concurrent type of approach. If you're using a squat, bench, or deadlift, does it follow a linear progression? Does it follow a non-linear where it kind of creeps up and down? I mean, it's, as long as there's all of them, to be honest, no matter what it is, all of them are linear because they're all going to work up over time. It's just how it gets there. And I can answer questions on this after I'm done babbling about the other stuff, but this is very complex. I can do a whole day seminar just on each one of these. But that would be the main lift. Usually that's the first lift when you're in the gym. And that lift has the highest dynamic correspondence or carryover to the technical lifts that you're going to be doing when you compete or you're going for a maximal. Everybody understand that? Okay. If you were to take these completely out of your strength training program and you're a power lifter, how much success do you think you would have? None. You would suck. Let's put it that way. So this has a very, very, very large importance. Number one, most important thing is that and how that's being cycled. Now the cool thing between today with everybody wanting to bitch about the internet and when I came up, your access to this segment of a program is so available, it's unbelievable. In '83, I had to figure this shit out. I had to have people tell me what to do, you know, that I was training with. You didn't just find the meat of a program anywhere. To be honest, and I don't want to give credit if it's not due, I think Louis is the one that actually broke the bubble on this. Like, he's the first one that actually started writing about how a program's actually put together. And then from that, people started to share how they were actually training in the programming now. Now you have access to linear models, non-linear models. I mean, you could just Google search any of this crap and you're going to find this part of a training program like that. I don't think anybody in here questions this part. Now, they do bounce around a lot. You know, they won't stay with the same program, but they don't question the importance of it, nor do they question the ability to be able to find what it is. This actually, in my opinion, is the easiest part to program. All right, because it is pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward. Under that would be what I call supplemental. The supplemental exercise. Now we're going to start to get into a lot of my philosophy and a lot of the things where I say I would have done differently. I believe strongly that there is a difference between training a movement and training a muscle. Big time. And that's been more ingrained since I've been training pretty much like a bodybuilder since 2005 or 2006, and have seen and felt the difference. An example that everybody can relate to would be, think about doing a maximal bench press or a heavy set of 5 on the bench press. Picture what the arm movement pattern looks like, and then picture a croc row, which is a heavy, short row. That's basically the same thing in reverse. So that's training a movement. It's training the movement of the bench press. It's helping to make that movement stronger. Now, let's picture a dumbbell row, where you let the scapula relax and stretch your lat at the bottom, and you drive your elbow as high as you can at the top and contract. So you have maximal stretch to maximal contraction. Now you're training a muscle. You're not going to be able to use as much weight training the muscle as you can training the movement. I think both are vital when it comes to powerlifting. Through my years as a powerlifter, all my movements were based on training movement, not muscle. As a result of that, I think I've accumulated joint damage and other injuries because most of the lifts a powerlifter does are trying to find ways to make a movement the shortest range movement you possibly can. You know, you want to try to take a squat that may be 18 inches and shorten it down to 9. You want to try to take a bench that may be 12 inches and make it 8. Why? You lift more weight, traveling a shorter distance. Well, to correspond and to get that carryover, your accessories are going to follow the same pattern. You may not even know it until you start looking and thinking about the accessories you're currently doing now to train your main lifts. Those accessory movements are probably things like board presses, JM presses, short tricep extensions, shoulders to elbows, back up, short range delt movements. I'm trying to think of other examples. I mean, you guys, I could probably just ask examples. You guys could just blow them all out. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to find those movements that are going to directly carry over to this first one. To make this easier to understand, I'm going to use a concurrent approach. For me, the floor press, 2 board press, and close grip incline press had dynamic correspondence to my bench press. I always knew my floor press was going to be 90% of what my raw bench was going to be. I always knew my 2 board press was going to be 92% of what my raw bench was going to be. My close grip incline press was always going to be 64% of what my raw bench was going to be. To me, a raw bench back then was usually whatever I could hit on one board. We never really did straight raw presses, but a 1 board to your chest is damn near the same. It's just breathing more. When I trained for the bench press, I did not put myself in a competitive position in the gym. I only did that in a meet to keep some of the pressure off my low back. So I could get that extra inch from the board just with body position. I know these percentages for a fact because I tracked them for 14 years. Because I wanted to know what carried over to what. Because to me, I wanted an indicator because I needed to know what I was going to open my bench with because we, honest to God, never benched in the gym. The shirts and gear were different then too. So now there's a whole other factor which changes the rules a little bit. But that allowed me and gave me a clue of where I actually stood. These exercises I would use closer to a meet. Why am I telling you about those? Because when it came to supplemental work for my upper body, I wasn't working triceps, I wasn't working pecs. I was working movements to make my close grip. I wanted to make these stronger. Not this. I didn't give a shit about making that stronger. I cared about making those stronger because I knew for a fact when those went up, that went up. So what did I have to do to make those better? That's where I put my focus when it came to the supplemental movements. Through trial and error, you figure those out. Because you're currently doing, these would rotate in my cycle and my training plan at least once every 8 weeks or so. So if I started doing JM presses, and my close grip incline at the time was 415. And I started doing JM presses and everything else pretty much stays the same. I rotate back 4 or 5 weeks later to the close grip incline, and now it's 455. Now I know the JM press has a correspondence to my close grip bench. That drove that up. Now if whatever I'm doing here doesn't drive these up, I'm changing this shit. Because this is the main goal. I'm not going to waste my time doing exercises that are not going to bring up the movements that I want to bring up. So over time, I found jam press, floor extensions, chain extensions on the floor, just barbell, tricep extensions on the floor using a bunch of chain. I put like a quarter each side and just start loading chain up, less stretch or less damage to the elbow, but still ton of force on the tricep at the top. Those all carried over. So over time, I began to build a list of supplemental exercises that were bringing up my main movement, which in turn brought up my technical skill. Am I confusing everybody yet? You're all with me? Okay. Throughout this, I'm gonna skip back and forth because I know most of you probably don't use a concurrent style of training. So now if you're using a different style of training to where this main exercise here is always the squat, bench, or deadlift, rules are still the same. You will notice through your training when you're doing certain movements as supplemental movements, you will feel better when you're doing the main movement. Those are movements you need to put brackets around and star them and make sure they become in your program more frequently. Now you don't want to live and die by them because every movement's got limited strength potential is the way I like to explain it. You will adapt. You will come to become too used to it to where it won't have the effect that you're looking for anymore. So a lot of these movements here I would only save before a meet. In the non-meet time when there's no meet going on, I would try all kinds of different things to see if it would have any correspondence. And a lot of times this stuff would go down. So those I would put in there for that. So one of them is going to be based upon actually watching a max effort exercise go up. Others are going to be on how you feel. For example, going back to the bench, I had a dynamic bench day and a max effort bench day. This close grip incline really had more of an effect on my speed work than it did my maximal strength. I added close grip incline presses in and my speed on the bench went through the roof every single time. All right. The floor press had more of an impact on the max, or my max effort work, the heavier stuff. But a lot of this that I'm speaking about is coming about because I stuck with the same philosophy or the same program for 14 years. When you start jumping around from program to program, you're never going to be able to fine-tune things. And that's where the supplemental and the accessory work comes in, is being able to fine-tune these little details. These little details, we already know this is the big stuff right here. This stuff is probably going to get 90% of you in this room where you want to go. But what if you want to go that one extra step nobody else can go? You need to fine-tune the shit underneath it. All right, and that's what I'm talking about here. And that's why I killed what I was going to talk about, because I want to give you the stuff that would give you that extra 10% that most people are never going to see, because they don't think this deep into a program. They think here, that's it. Hey, I'm going to do this. We're going to, use this program. We're going to do this. They never even think at all of what movements will make the movement that makes my squat stronger. They never think down that level. They will think to the level of saying, well, glute ham raises are supposed to make my squat and deadlift stronger, so I'm going to do those. First off, you're making an assumption that may not be true for you. Why not find out? Do it in there and pay attention. Does your squat and deadlift feel better? You will know within 3 or 4 weeks if it feels better or not. You may be able to stand up stronger. You may be able to stay tighter. You may be able to sit back further. You will notice something. If you don't, then it's not having any correspondence to carry over. Get it the hell out and put something else in. What I'm saying here is, what makes the glute ham stronger? If you already figure out the glute ham raise makes those lifts go up, well, how do we now make that glute ham raise better? That's the trick. That's the role of the supplemental movements. Now, when you look at a supplemental exercise, these are generally going to be trained like a movement. You're not going to be focusing on what the hell the triceps feel like or what the chest feels like. These are going to be trained heavy. These are probably going to be trained more in a 3 to 5 set range of 3 to 6 reps. It's heavy. It's heavy shit. I mean, you're working here. You're pushing hard, and you're probably going to be pushing these to try to break GRs. You know, I don't buy this PR shit. You know, a PR is something that's an all-time thing. You know, you break something in the gym, GR, not PR. You know what I'm saying? Everybody breaks PRs today. It's ridiculous. You know, I broke 15 PRs today in the gym. No, you didn't. You had a good day. You know, there's a difference. But here you're trying to build a tower, okay? With any program, going back to what I was saying before, block, linear, nonlinear, cube, whatever you want to call it, your body really isn't going to be able to handle much more than one supplemental movement. Because you're already, let's back up now. You're already hitting it pretty hard. You've already done your squat training, which at the front end of a cycle could be set to 8, it could be set to 5. You know, I don't know how you guys are training. So you've already hit that. So you've already put a great load on your central nervous system and your body to begin with. And now you've hit your second movement hard, you know, for 3 to 6 reps, 3 to 5 sets. Generally around, you know, if it's in the 90% range, 4, maybe 6 total reps in the 90% range, 80% range, 10, 15 total in that range, depending upon how you can cycle this stuff too. I have an article that we're actually putting out today that's 10,000 words. So that's, you guys don't need to really kill yourself taking notes, because I spent a lot of time writing some of this stuff out, not knowing if I wanted to post it or not post it. So you guys kind of gave me the decision to post it. So that will help tie a lot of this stuff in a little bit better, because I'm just up here babbling, and I know half of you are probably thinking, what the fuck? I thought all I had to do was squat, bench, and deadlift. And now I'm taking it to a level like, now I got to figure out what makes them better? How am I going to, then I got to figure out what makes that better? How am I going to figure that out? Pay attention. Most of this stuff, if you sit down and really think about it, you already know. I can sit down with probably any one of you and say, what do you know makes your bench stronger? And you will tell me something. All right, now when I say, now what do you think will make that stronger? You're going to be clueless. That's what we need to waken up, is that focus on how to make that part stronger. Because it's way, way easier to make that part stronger than it is to make this part stronger. When you're dealing with the top competitive lifts up here, that's where I wrote technique. Technique is vital. You know, technique is what you're going to learn tomorrow. Technique can put 50 pounds on your lift in one day without ever getting stronger. I'm removing technique from this whole equation. We're talking about training right now. Technique should be part of any training program. I'll be the first to admit that. That's why I'm more of a fan of a concurrent training program, because you get more reps, you get more technical reps than what you're going to get with doing 3 sets of 5. It's 70%. Because in my opinion, I don't see 3 sets of 5. I see 3 first reps. And when you're a competitive powerlifter, what matters is the first rep. The other ones don't mean anything. The other ones are just training. So when I see 3 first reps and I'm looking at somebody's program, and that's all I see for a week, and over a period of a month, they got 12 reps. You've worked your technique on this lift 12 times. And you actually think you're going to get better? No. So if you are not using a concurrent approach and you're using, you know, one of the other type of training programs, at the very least, take an extra workout, I'm killing the water here, or even at the front end or back end of your workout, and just broomstick squat. Reinforce the technique. You know, do a rep, stop. step, change your stance, get back in your squat stance, do another rep. Don't do continuous reps when you're building technique, because you can stand there and go over and over and over and over and over. All right? Break this pattern, reestablish the pattern. Break the pattern, reestablish the pattern. If you're practicing your bench press for technique, press it, rack it. Bring it out, press it, rack it. So the things that you're going to learn tomorrow are going to be to teach you the technical aspects. Okay. All this shit I knew when I was training. None of this I would have changed, because this worked. What I would have changed is when you get down to, and I'm going to write ass, because that's what I think I was when it came to this. Accessories. My accessory training. Let me get some water before I go on a tangent. We had these dumbbells in the gym, and I don't even know how much they weighed, but they weren't bolted together real well, and they rattled. So we called them the rattlers. They weighed about maybe 15, 20 pounds. So after we did this stuff, we just shook those things. We'd do some of this, some of this, some of this, and we just did pretty much what you're doing. You know, after you do your first things, you go, oh, I hit some triceps, I hit some shoulders, and you just go grab some shit and do this, do this. You don't even put any thought into it. None at all. Nothing changes. That's what I would change. Because that's where I think all this is definitely going to have a compounding overreaching, overworking. I mean, everything is joint damage and accumulation, regardless of who you are and what you do. Every rep you do is degenerating a joint. It's just how we are as humans. I just happen to degenerate faster than others because I did a lot of dumb shit. So I'm able to stand up here and say, don't do this dumb shit. Learn from what I did. And I think a lot of that, you know, stems I could have avoided a lot getting down into this area here. Because this is movement based. Everything here is movement based. Movement based is always going to have greater force and greater torque and greater impact on a joint than what muscle based would be. Why? Because it's going to be heavier, for one thing. It's going to be done at a higher psychological state. You're going to be putting more effort into it, more force into it. And it's going to be more repetitive. Bench press, floor press, 2-board press, 3-board press, JM press, close grip bench press. Aren't they all shoulder extension, or shoulder rotation, tricep extension? Even the slightest changes do make a difference, but isn't it all the same shit to a certain degree? So it is going to wear on the joint. Not saying that's bad, that's good, because you want to build up that movement pattern. That's the whole point of what you're trying to do, is to make this movement pattern as strong as you possibly can. Where I would go back and change things is when I got down into this part of the program, movement training is no longer the priority. Down here, why are you doing the side raises, the hammer curls, the tricep push downs? Why are you doing any of those movements at the end of your training program? Anybody? To build the muscle. Or you could take the other approach of some guys that will say, well, don't even do it, it's a waste of time. So either you're not doing it at all, which means you're building no muscle, or you're doing it to build muscle. You're definitely not doing, you know, right? You know that if your tricep push down goes from 60 pounds to 90 pounds, that your bench isn't gonna fucking move a pound. You know that, right? I mean, have you all figured that out? Raise your hands if you've kind of figured that out. Because if you haven't figured that out, go do a bunch of tricep extensions. You know, push downs. Push downs, I'm talking about, push downs. Or a better example would be kickbacks. Okay? You know, if your kickback goes from 10 pounds to 15 pounds, your bench probably isn't going to go up. How's that? You got that, right? Okay. Well, what happens is when you get to accessories, most people wing it like I did. Let's just do this shit to get it over with, and you're not putting any focus into it, or they train it too heavy. You know, they're using side raises with more weight than Ronnie Coleman would use. You know, or they're doing hammer curls, 120-pound hammer curls, trying to impress who's ever in the gym. You're working muscle, not movement. When you get into working muscle, now let's start thinking muscle training principles. When you're working this main movement here, we're thinking methods of examples of maximal concentric, like hanging, suspended, good mornings. Anybody ever do those? Let me think of something else. A pin press. Anybody do a pin press? All right, it's a maximal concentric movement. So you're using maximal concentrics. Methods used up here are going to be more maximal in nature. Different types of methods that are going to work in the 90% plus range. Partials, that's a board press. Maximal concentrics, you know, it's what I just said, the pin press, pin pulls, things like that. They're all maximal type methods. When you're in the supplemental category, you're dealing with still training a movement, so you're kind of dealing with maximal type methods, but you can also play around a little bit with rest pause, cluster sets, rest pause, doing the maximal set of 3, racking it, count 10, 15, do another rep. You know, cluster, timeout, you know, do a set of 3, time for 10, 15 seconds, do another set of 3. Time 15 seconds, do another set of 3. Time, do another set of 3. Pick the percentage based upon what it is. I listed all these in the article that I'm going to present, you know, which will fall in each one. But they're more supplemental. Now when you're getting down into here, into accessory stuff, now you can start getting into the key thing with a movement and the movement-based training here is to lift heavy-ass shit that you know is going to make this stuff stronger. That's the key. Find a way to row the fuck out of the dumbbell. All right? Find a way to press the shit out of the dumbbell. All right? Move as much as you can for that using whatever methods that are going to allow that to happen. When we come down here, and let's say a dumbbell press now falls here as an accessory because you want to build your chest. You're not concerned about building your bench with this movement anymore. So your elbows are now going to not be here. They're going to come out here. Now when you move down here, guess what's going to happen? Let's train the muscle. What are some techniques that can help you train the muscle more efficiently? Let's cut the tempo in half for one. Yeah, your 100-pound dumbbell press just dropped to about 50. But who gives a shit? Because you're going to train the muscle more optimally. So you cut the weight, slow the tempo. Get a full stretch in the muscle. Press up to a full contraction. Learn what a full contraction and a full stretch is. Learn what the full range of the muscle is. Let's work the muscle, not train this shit like a movement. If this is to build muscle, let's do it right. You know, let's take something from the bodybuilders for once. You know, let's use what they know. There's a reason why they can't squat 900 pounds but have bigger legs than powerlifters. You know, there's a reason why powerlifters have smaller legs than bodybuilders. You know, a lot of it goes to being able to have the awareness to know how to train a muscle compared to a movement. And there is a big, big, big difference. You know, just David Allen this morning I had showing him how to do some lat pull downs. Tell him what happened. Basically cut the weight. This is just a typical lat pull down. I'm watching him do the pull downs. I know he's a power lifter. I know he's a strength athlete. He's a pull down. What carryover possibly is a vertical pull going to have to any of these lifts? None. So I know immediately he's doing this for muscle work. So let's drill the muscle. So I love that shit. So let's find a way to go over and drill him so his lats feel on fire and like they're going to blow out of his shirt. All right, so we lower the weight. We used a different bar, taught him how to try to bend the bar, flex the contraction of the lats, and work the muscle. Weight drops, his lats are blown up. Another movement had him do was a hammer row, seated hammer row, sit, pull towards you. Something that most powerlifters you'd see throw 5 plates on a side and just start cranking the shit out of it. Awesome. If you want to work your biceps, we want to work the lat, so we change it a little bit. And if you try to pull down on that machine this way and row back, you'll notice your back is going to contract a hell of a lot harder than if you're just pulling. All right, so simple things, simple adjustments you can do with every movement can change how that movement is going to impact a muscle. Those are those simple things you need to be doing with the assistance exercises. What are the best assistance exercises? I don't give a shit. The ones you feel, if you're doing something for your triceps, find something that you feel it the most in your tricep that works it through that full range of motion. Maybe you don't feel anything in a tricep push down, but you feel something in the cross body tricep extension. And if you don't, let's throw some methods in there and make you do. Some other ones, another example would be a double set. If you're doing a single arm exercise, say we're doing a crossbody tricep extension, go to failure on your right arm, go to failure on your left arm, throw it right back to your right arm, go right into another set. I guarantee you get 15 on this one, you're going to get 6 next time you go back. And when you're done, your tricep cooked. That's working muscle. That's what needs to be happening down here. That's where I screwed up big time, was down in there, in that range. Other things that you can do, and I don't want to go through all the Weider principles, but that's kind of what I'm talking. I mean, you can do supersets, trisets, drop sets, strip sets, all that other kind of stuff. So this also is actually giving you permission and the ability to have some fun with your training. You can put that stuff back in there because you keep the tempo down. As long as you're not being an idiot, slow the tempo down, make sure you're working the muscle. The movement's being initiated with the muscle, not movement, not momentum. Then yes, you can and should train every single one of those exercises to failure. And I define to failure as you come up with that rep, you're thinking maybe I might got another one, maybe not. To me, that's failure. All right, this stuff here, supplemental, I like to see those trained about 2 reps shy of failure. So you'll come up, it's still hard, but if you really got cranked, you could drill out another couple if you wanted to. But this stuff down here, as long as you're controlling the tempo, take it to failure and beyond. Pre-exhaust, strip sets, drop sets, double sets. If I can do 21s if you want. If it's your biceps you need to build. Typically that's not going to be the case. For a powerlifter, you need to build your hamstrings. You need to build the triceps. I wouldn't worry a whole lot about traps and erectors. And the reason I say that is because when I look at powerlifters who decide, and this happens more frequently than you actually know, who decide to try to be bodybuilders and they go to a show, usually their quads suck. All right, usually their legs aren't that, the legs aren't that good. A lot of times the arms aren't that good. Chests are fair, but when they turn around, their traps and their erectors kill everybody. Now, isn't this ironic? Think about this for a minute. They're never directly trained. How many powerlifters do you know that are really doing shrugs, upright rows, or anything for their traps? Think about it. How many of them are really doing anything directly outside of maybe good mornings for their spinal erectors? Yeah, you can throw in reverse hypers and stuff like that, But is a reverse hyper really going to give you the hypertrophy that we're talking about? You know, where it looks like a six-pack running down somebody's back? No. So how are those muscles being developed on these guys? Anybody have any ideas? Not bad technique. Close. Yes. Heavy loads on squats and deads and benches. What two muscles have to always be tight on all three lifts? Your upper back and your lower back have to always be tight, held in an isometric contraction throughout every rep you do on the squat, bench, and deadlift. All right? Interesting if you think about it. Never directly trained through a full range of motion. Only trained in an isometric contraction. But yet, the only two muscle parts they can stand on the stage and compete with a bodybuilder with. Just something interesting to ponder in your mind. Not saying that you need to do all isometric work on every supplemental exercise you do, but that shows you that there is the potential of just an isometric contraction has in muscular development. Keep in mind that isometric contraction, the time under tension was mentioned as well. That is through the whole set. You know, it's not being released. It's not being held for 4 seconds and released. It's held until the damn set's done. You know, and on a bench press, it's actually being held before the bar's even pulled out. So on a set of 5 on the bench press, we could be looking at a time under tension of a static isometric contraction of 20 to 30 seconds, which is a long time. You know, muscle building, you know, if you're into and follow the time under tension philosophy, the best muscle building is going to happen between 45 to 90 seconds, 90 seconds being more for the legs. That falls more into this stuff down here. You know, when you're doing the muscle building exercises, you don't want that set to last 8 seconds. I'll guarantee it's going to suck. And you're not going to build anything out of it. So, movements that we would be throwing in here would be for things like triceps, which we already know the triceps are going to carry over to the supplemental exercises. And this is where you start asking questions. Vincent's got one of the best bench pressers probably in the world, one of the best pressers to ever live, you know, both multiply and raw. Look at him. You want to know what muscles you need to bench? Just look at him. You know, triceps, lats. That's a clue, by the way, which means you need to build some triceps and you need to build some lats. You know, so down here you're going to do some lat work to focus on building that muscle and tricep work to focus on that. I hate to use the 4-letter word pump, especially in a strength training, you know, conference, but you need to pump the shit. You need to pump it till it's purple. You need to pump the shit out of it. You know, when you do that, you're putting a ton of blood in the muscle. Everybody's worried about recovery and restoration. This is not heavy stuff we're talking about here. We're talking about pump work. Pump work is more restorative or recovery based than it is actual tearing down based. Flood that shit, pump the hell out of it, so every time you're walking out of the gym, you got this big ass tricep pump, make you walk like an idiot. And then for the legs, it's going to be an ass. It's going to be an ass and a hamstring pump. So you're going to walk like, you know, you're going to walk like somebody stuck something up your ass. But that's all good if it's building up your ass and your hamstrings. When's the last time that you've had your hamstrings pumped? What's that? Good for you. One person. I mean, think about it. When is the last time that you've actually had your hamstring feel like were gorged full of blood? Ass is the same way. I'm not saying you guys sit on that machine and do that stupid shit that I do where you push your knees out. I got a hip replacement. I got to do things I never would have wanted to do. You know, but you got to find a way to build the glutes, you know, where you're feeling it in the glutes. And I'll tell you what, if it takes doing a glute press machine for you to feel it in your glutes, I don't care what anybody says to you. Do it, because that's a muscle you need. It's one of the most important muscles you need to support the spine when it comes to the squat and the deadlift. Glutes and lats, most important when it comes to supporting the spine. So if you got to use the glute press, use the glute press. If you got to lay on the floor and do that Jane Fonda shit, do the Jane Fonda stuff. You know, do it at home. You know, do whatever you need to do, but you know, get the pump in there. So that's where I feel I made my biggest mistake. I kind of rambled through it a little bit because I killed my actual presentation to be able to present what I feel is going to be most beneficial instead of trying to go through a logical approach. But what you will see is the muscle that you develop here, okay? Your weak muscle will impact the supplemental exercises, which will in turn increase the strength of your main movement, which will in turn increase the strength of your bench press. Everybody wants to think this way. I'm asking you to think this way. Would you rather go down or up? Is the question that really needs to be asked. And when you begin to think things that way, your whole training philosophy will change, and how you look at programs will change, because this here is not West Side. This is not the Cube. This is not 531. This is not Juggernaut. This is not 1020 Life. This is not any of those. This is how to make all of them better, because all of them focus predominantly here. And that's it. Now some will, I think actually all of them, will talk a little bit about weak point training. That's bullshit. And let me tell you why that's bullshit. A weak point and where you stick, it's called a mini-max, all right? Or whatever you want to call it, your sticking point, mini-max, whatever it is. Just because you miss your bench press here, does that mean you're weak there? Think about it. Is that the cause or is that the effect? Exactly. So if you're weak there and all your focus is, oh, I need to do work from here to here because that's where I'm weak, are you addressing the problem or are you ignoring the issue? That's where you got to be cautious when it comes to, oh, you need to do this because of this weak point. Maybe you're missing halfway off the bench because you lowered the bar too damn slow. Maybe you're flaring too soon. Maybe it's a technical issue. Maybe your shoulders are not strong enough to be able to push it through. You know, assumptions are being made without taking movement patterns into consideration. None of us are the same. All right, where you miss is the effect, not the cause. All right, so if you always miss your deadlift here, doing rack lockouts probably isn't going to solve the problem if you just got it there too damn slow. How come you don't miss there when you use lighter weight? How come you don't miss there if you use a reverse band? Could it be because you got there a little faster? Are you missing because you can't strain for that 3 seconds? You can only strain for 2.5? Now you're thinking, oh shit just got real. It gets way more complicated than a lot of people make it, is what I'm trying to say. Now, forget all that for a minute. I'm just using that as an example just to show things get way more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be. This here addresses all that crap, because we're not addressing a weak point. We're addressing what you know works, what has the highest, we are addressing the highest carryover, the highest correspondence. We're addressing that. We're addressing how to make that better. Then we're addressing what muscles are required to make that better. You're covering all bases. You need to think differently. Instead of thinking this is where the sticking point is, this is what the solution is. That's not what it is. People put it out there to try to make themselves seem like they know what they're doing, or maybe they had luck and they overcame a sticking point because of that reason. You know, and it very well could be what you need to throw in is your supplemental exercise to help bring it up. But you can spend all day and night trying to do an exercise that's supposed to make you stronger off the chest. So you're always weak off the chest and the bench. And everybody tells you, do dumbbell presses. Dumbbell presses, dumbbell. You can do dumbbell presses and get 50 pounds stronger on the dumbbell press and it still gets stuck on your chest. Why? Maybe you're missing because you can't keep your lats in position to drive your triceps through as you lower. You're addressing the wrong thing. This is impossible to address the wrong thing because it's all about addressing the right things and building upon them. Any questions? I'm not that good. Yeah?
The article that you put out includes the supplemental work for the squat and deadlift?
No, what I really covered more so, and I'm glad you asked because this is how we can handle this Q&A part. I put a bunch of methods. I explained basically what was here, and then I listed, different methods. Like I got all the Weider principles, by the way. I covered them all, down here. And I gave an example, with each one. Your question was in regards to what? What movement did you ask me about?
I want to know the supplemental and accessory work for the squat and deadlift.
Okay. For the squat and the deadlift. Let's go with the squat. How much do you squat? I don't give a shit. Just make something up. Why? You can squat 800 today. Everybody can be a champion in here. All right. So you squat 800. All right. You squat 800. How many years have you been training?
Legitimately,
4. Okay. What exercise outside of the squat have you known that's gotten better from you moving from 650 to 800?
Front squat.
Boom. There's your supplemental exercise. Now, we know we make that front squat better, your squat goes up. Now, how are we going to make that front squat better? That's the question. That's where we want to get into from supplemental work. That's the question that you're asking me. Different methods that you can go about doing that because that's going to be a supplemental exercise. Actually, it's going to be supplemental, or if you train West Side, it's going to be a main. Either way. Obviously, the very simple question, the simple answer is heavy sets of 5, heavy sets of 3. That would be one way. Another way is to do quasi-isometrics with that movement. Drop down, into it, come up, hold. Yielding, actually go the other way. Start, come down, stop, hold. And when I say hold, you're going to hold, pick a weight that you're going to hold for maybe 10 seconds. I mean, that's actually kind of a lot too because you don't want to blow your colon out. Because it's going to be pretty heavy. You do them on a box, front squats down to a box. So you can use the same movement, but just change it up a little bit on how you're going to actually train it. Squat it into pins, drive into the pin with it, different things like that. Or just simply doing the front squats and waving it. Do a week of 5s, do a couple weeks of triples, and then hit a single. I don't know how long. Everybody's different on how long they can wave a supplemental exercise. Usually 3 to 4 weeks is going to be about tops for anybody. More advanced guy is going to be 2. Now down here, you can wave this crap for a long time. You can stay on the same exercise for a long time. This you can't. As soon as you stop making progress, you need to get out of it and move on to something else. So I would find, and you'll find ways that are more maximal type of methods to train it. The simple, most effective is just straight sets, reps, and stay with that. And if that stops working, then start throwing in some isometric work with that and so forth. Any other questions? Yes?
So can you have this for powerlifting? Can you use this for any sport?
Sports become a little bit different because the question I would ask there is what movements you feel carry over to that sport the best. And this is where we're getting out of my realm a little bit. So it very well could be a coach is going to say the squat, yes, it does. The deadlift, I don't want my players deadlifting, no. The clean, yes. So then the clean would go here, and then something else could go there that could be as far out as just being a 10-yard dash. And then everything's going to follow underneath that sequence. Becomes a little bit more complicated. Same philosophy, same principles apply no matter, in my opinion, no matter how you train, what sport you train. Because we're just talking about a progression of how to cycle and how to use accessory movements to maximize whatever your main goal is. The key is to know what has the highest correspondence to the sport that you're working with. And if it starts to expand into a list of more than 3 to 5 things, you're already fucked. Because you can't peak on more than that. So narrowing it down is the best. Typically for an athlete too, this probably isn't going to be there and that's not going to be there. The bench and the deadlift are probably going to be pulled out for most athletes. With most coaches that I speak with, they'd rather have something in there like a close grip incline, you know, something along those lines. Other questions? Yes.
Well, you said more advanced, they cycle them out every 2 weeks, intermediate maybe 4 to 6 weeks. One of the guys on your crew, Josh Bryant, I think he's probably one of my favorites as far as the programming goes on the site. And, if you guys look at his books like the Power Building Basics or whatever, the one that was in the mall, he keeps the same program, the same accessories for 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why you would say change them out?
Well, he's changing something. If you're looking at it, something's changing. You can.
Like you'll do bench press 5 sets of 5 this week, then you'll go wide grip, and then you'll do touch and go. And then
Yes.
you'll do off the pants.
It's changing every week.
But the percentages change, but the movements still stay the same. So is that similar to this? Just
Exactly. So the same. It's changing. Keep in mind when you're dealing, even the slightest change can make a huge difference in the joint. And this I did not know until after I had my hip replaced. If I squat, say I always squat in this position here, and the only thing I do different between one workout and the next is the one workout I just squat pushing with the midsole of my foot. The next one I'm actually just trying to take my heels and move the floor apart. If all I do is that, the contraction, the glute completely changes, and the impact and the torque on the joint changes.
these are all the same workout.
This is a different workout. Say it's a different workout. Now bodybuilding wise, yes, I would say you can change it every set. If you're trying to build strength in a movement, I would keep it the same for that workout. But Josh is changing something every week. You know what I'm saying? The percentage, how it's being done is changing every single week. Yes, and that's fine. As long as it's, you know, it's got to progress, it's got to wave. All right, and what you're probably seeing is, you know, more here is where, at that top level. And that is where you will be dealing with linear periodization, which is what he works with, and other types of periodization, which aren't typically West Side based. That movement will never change. Those squat, bench, and deadlifts will never change. The guys I work with, those movements really never change until...
More than one way to skin cat type method.
Yeah, this part here, this main part, there's many ways to skin the cat. You know, there's many styles of periodization. That, like I said, each one of those would be a whole day seminar in itself to explain linear periodization, concurrent. Actually, I used to do a seminar that was a whole day just on concurrent periodization. I didn't put any focus here whatsoever. I put all my focus down here. So the movements that happen after that. All right, I'll take one more question.
Are you seeing a decrease of injuries with this type of training with the people you're dealing with?
Yeah. Well, the muscle. You know, we're actually getting muscle to be activated instead of making the sport completely a complete neural central nervous system activity. You know, we're starting to develop building muscle. Will make people stronger. All right. I mean, there's repetition method, dynamic method, and max effort method. Repetition method is building muscle. Bigger muscle is a stronger muscle. But in powerlifting and strength sports, that's paid less attention to because it's not the greatest, the fastest way or the greatest means to an end. But it's been ignored. You know, it's not been paid attention to in any way whatsoever. So now we're able to build those muscles which help stabilize the movements that are actually, to be honest, are actually being overworked, you know, with all the other stuff. All right, I want to thank you guys. That's all I got. Do you have any announcements to make?